to be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canada hockey fans in the United States.
The Hockey Time Machine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hockey Time Machine. I'm Glenn Dreyfus. To spin a Howard Stern phrase, Rob Simpson is the king of all hockey media. In 2015, you get a network radio show on Sirius XM with Gord Stellick and Simmer. And 2015 to 2019, here's a sample. This is a segment, a recurring segment of yours called 3 Questions with Simmer.
Hi, this is Rod Brindamore, coach of the Carolina Hurricanes, and it's time for 3 Questions with Simmer. Hey, Simmer, first time I met you, I didn't realize you were tall and stupid.
No, thank you, Rod. 3 Questions with Simmer. The creator, founder, executive producer, Rob Simpson.
Let's bring in the band, the Wink Martindale Memorial He's Not Dead Yet band. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen. From Dogtown, Alabama, Gord Stellick. Yeah. He says if he wins 3 Questions with Simmer, he's going to celebrate by going to Dollywood. That's Dolly Parton's theme park in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. He says he wants to see the mountains. Thank you. Thank you very much. What country did he play in? That would be Rod Brindamore.
Oh, is this during the lockout question
during
again?
The 04-05 lockout. What country did he play during the 04-05 lockout?
I'm thinking my Flyer history. I mean,
I just gave you a Flyer history question.
No, but I mean, okay, I'm going to guess Switzerland. I go, it's wow. Great question. I love those questions.
Rob, I'm guessing that clip is probably being used in college broadcasting classes all over North America.
Oh boy, that was pretty cool. I could still do it. I did it up until I'll tell you one thing. This is the beautiful thing about hockey players and hockey people and it just whatever being involved with it over the time. Like I had Sidney Crosby do that twice. The first time you'd have him ask the questions for you, then you'd have him make 2 smart ass remarks or 3. One would be directed at me or Gord. One would be directed at Bruce, the producer, or Mike Lippa, the board op. And the guys played along beautifully. And I mean, we did everybody. I had Ovechkin. I had all the coaches at some point in the league, because I think I did it for 3-4 years. All the superstars did it. And Sid twice. The first time, the last line was Simmer paid me to do this, but here goes. Chicks dig Simmer. And that's like 3 years or 4 years later, he came back. I said, Sid, he did it again. And he said that it was kind of the same thing. He goes, this is the second time he's made me say this. Chick dig Simmer. But
we should mention that the first voice on that clip, and I should have mentioned it before, was Rod Brindamore.
Yeah, Rod Brindamore did it. I see. I would not have remembered that because I hit up everybody I could throughout the league. So in Toronto, when the home media would all rush into the Leafs room, I'd be like, you'd have the sheep herd thing going on with like 17 people or 24 people wrapped around a guy, and then another guy. I'm like, why would I get that? So me and 3 other guys maybe would always go to the road room, and part of my responsibility, my own personal responsibility every time was, you'd find out what's going on, and then, hey, Roman Yossi, you want to do this? Sure. I'd say, this is what it is, blah, blah, blah. And you record the hit, little ding, 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 and, take less than 2 minutes. So they had no problem with it. I think I did. It's funny. I think I did JT Miller with the Canucks. Like if you pick the star player off a team, all 30 1 or 30 teams at the time. We had them. They all did 3 Questions with Simmer. And then maybe the ultimate thing, growing up watching game shows as a kid, there was Wink Martindale. So totally random joke was the Wink Martindale Memorial He's Not Dead Yet band, right? Because he was still alive. He's in his 80s. And he was like Elvis Presley's buddy. So Wink Martindale was always this joke. And the last year we did it, I was like, you know what? Let's get Wink Martindale on the show. Let's have Wink Martindale on the show. So I go online. It wasn't really that difficult. I got a hold of Wink Martindale. I think I sent him an email or I called a number and he answered the phone. It was like Gordy in 1981. I'm on the phone with Wink Martindale and I explained to him, here's what we do. I'll send you this little script. Because we did have live guys do it every once in a while. Scampy did it live once. John Butchercross didn't know what was going on. He did it once. And then Wink did it. And the guys almost died. They basically fell off their chairs. Because they never knew who the guy was going to be until we went on the air live. The questions were secret because it was a competition to answer the questions between Gord and Bruce. And they never knew who the guest was. It was always a surprise. I'm like, oh, cool. Alexander Ovechkin. So Wink Martindale goes, hi, this is Wink Martindale. And it's time for 3 Questions with Simmer. They're like, oh my God. So Wink did his thing. And then we actually had him on as a guest just for fun, like a month later. But what a great group we had. Our little posse there in the morning. It was a lot of fun. I got booted for budget cuts. I didn't know at the time. You always see people on Twitter saying, "Oh, I got fired," or "I lost my gig," or we got budget cutted out," or whatever it is. And I didn't do that, which I kind of regretted because like people were always going, "What the hell happened?" And then they think something nefarious had occurred, but actually it was just I was kind of keeping it private. I felt shatty about it. So I never went out in the world and said, oh, a guy just got chopped. So the ironic thing about that too is having done the 31 and 31 and 31, we had more publicity than probably any show in the history of that network. Not just from that trip, but just from the fact that everybody in the industry listened to it on a religious basis. And that's based on what dozens of coaches and GMs and executives have told us. And then to have that trip and to really be pumping the show and the network's tires, and then they chopped the budget. That following summer in 2019. So me and Gordy had our 4 years, and he was great. Gordy's like the consummate pro MC, like came out of the womb as an MC. Like, let me introduce you to my mom. She's just spit me out, and he always joked I came out with a full head of hair. That's his one line. But just a natural and a great guy. And I would have rants. Gordy was a little more careful. I would go on rants, and I think he'd be like, "Oh, geez, here we go." He goes, "You might get in trouble. Don't get us both in trouble." He wouldn't say it, but he'd be like, "Ugh." And then I'd go on a rant because I've been known to do that. And but it turned out to be entertaining, and he was great. And Lips and Bruce Bolton are both buddies. I mean, friends for life, and amazing fun, that show.
I have one complaint about 3 Questions with Simmer. That game show music is The Price is Right, which Wink Martindale did not host.
Correct. It's actually not The Price is Right. It's Match Game.
Oh.
It's the
okay. Half point off for me.
But
okay,
you're correct. Gene Rayburn. You're correct. It's the wrong show, but it didn't matter because it's not his show. It's the band. It's the Wink Martindale band. It's the Wink Martindale Memorial He's Not Dead Yet band. Because when we first started it, I'd say Wink Martin Memorial Band, and then we're like, wait a minute, is Wink Martindale alive? And then we were like, oh, he's alive. And then we started saying that he's not dead yet, which is not a very nice thing to say, by the way. And then ended up having him on the show. So that was pretty neat.
I don't understand how you got the players so easily to agree to this. Did they know about the segment? How much explanation did it take before they were willing to play along?
I think it's multiple factors. I think I was a familiar face to some degree from just around the league. Like, it's a very small hockey world, small hockey community. And I was in a lot of hallways and outside a lot of dressing rooms and in a lot of rinks and talked to a hell of a lot of people. So I think part of it was just recognition factor. So when I'd walk up, they weren't like, who's this? It's not like who's the high school kid. It's like, I kind of know, I might know who this is, even if they didn't know who I was. They kind of like, hey. And then of course some did know me. But I would just make it very snappy. So if like Roman Yossi, he wouldn't have been paying attention to anything I've ever done. I say, hey Roman, a second? And you go, yeah, and because they're great. I mean, they're first of all hockey players, and I think I ran into 2 in 4 years. I'm not going to say who they were that were difficult to get or wouldn't do it. And they didn't say they were going to do it. They just kind of like blew it off. But 98%, I would just go, here's the deal. Can you do 3 questions with Simmer? It'll take about 90 seconds. And you just have to ask 3 questions and then make a couple smart ass remarks. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And then
On the topic of getting players to do stuff, this is a screenshot from your obviously deeply intimate profile of Ray Bourque. What is going on here?
That is during a shoot of a show we did called Rubber Biscuit. So when I was traveling around doing the games, every live game, we also tucked in this, I don't know how the hell we did this, but produced and wrote and co-produced, I should say. Sorry. I helped with writing and hosting and ad-libbing most of it. And a guy, Sarge Karras, he did all the hard work back in the studio, like putting the production, the editing together with Kevin Newton. It was a lot of fun, but we did this all over the place. And that was Ray at his wife's spa in Danvers, Massachusetts. And that is, I don't want to say I pride myself on it because I really don't pride myself on it, but I generally find I ad-lib practically all the stand-ups I've ever done. And the first take's always the best because it's off the top of my head. I'm relaxed. I'm not thinking too much about it. And if the first one's no good for whatever reason, all right, it's harder to keep going through it. So usually it's just one. That time, every single time, and I've gotten the giggles in life, but not usually doing TV production. Every time I'd start talking and then turn my head and see his face, I would lose it. I probably took I was a 3-take max, and that would be just in case there was some extenuating circumstances that, okay, just for safety, let's do this again once or twice. That was probably 19 takes. And it was because every single time I turned, I'd start laughing at Ray. And the problem was the clay on our faces, because we were like, would start cracking. And we're like, the guys are like, Simmer, you better get your, what together, because we're going to run out of face mask. So come on, let's go. And then finally I just got through it, but I was struggling because just to look at his face was hard because it was very funny. And Ray Bourque plays an unbelievable straight man. Like he was really good.
And I have to say, to this day, your pores are remarkably soft and supple.
Aren't they? Yeah. I can thank my ex-wife for that, for making me put the cream on every day. Every day the aloe, baby. No, you're nuts. You're nuts.
Here's a more traditional photo, you with Bobby Orr. And what I wanted to ask you about this is, when you go into an interview with someone like Orr, who's been asked everything and been asked everything a bazillion times, how do you go about trying to find a different angle, an angle that will elicit something new or different from him?
Well, I have done a couple interviews with him, but in this case, that would be overstating your parameters of what you think I'm accomplishing there, because actually that was not an interview. We were at Hockey Hall of Fame for the debut of a film that they had put together. I think it was regarding the Stanley Cup. And that's the little movie theater at the Hall of Fame. And that's not an interview. That's just he and I sitting there shooting the breeze.
Well, then let me ask you more generally. Is it harder to interview people who have been interviewed a million times by the time you get to them?
Maybe. It depends purely on the situation. If you're in a scrum or you're on your own, even in a dressing room post game, or you know your time is limited and the topic is limited, and you don't have a chance to you can't really stray into deeper topics because either they just lost or they got to catch a plane, or it's a morning skate and you don't want to go too far off in the boonies when it comes to, pregame stuff. That's harder. But if you have time to plan, like when we had guests on every day on Selig and Simmer, or for a TV show, or I'm traveling around the country and I'm flying somewhere and with a crew and we know we got time to prepare. No, I mean, you just generate different questions. That's what I try to do as an ice level guy. It was come up with not necessarily unique, but just different angles, and maybe not even deeper necessarily, but just stay away from the same old crap. Like, how do you feel? Come up with things. And I will say this, in Seattle right now, there's the gal Piper, right?
Piper Shaw.
I like the fact she fires off the questions. Like if I'm critiquing, if I'm an executive producer, I could critique a lot, believe me, when it comes to the games in both countries. But she just bangs it out there. And that's, the question is succinct and it's quick. And that's, God, what a dream, because so often we get someone having to regurgitate setting the stage again on a walk-off question. It's like, we know all this, and the guy knows how the goal was scored, and the guy knows what the score is, and the guy knows who they're playing. So you don't need to recap the first period before you ask him the question. And that's an exaggerated example, but to some extent that occurs. Just get to the meat and potatoes. And I like the fact that she just goes, bang, what's going on here? And then he answers, and bang, what's going on here? I mean, people could learn a little lesson from that, because short and sweet. Don't make the question longer than the answer, for God's sakes.
How difficult is the job versus here we see you doing play-by-play? If you were the czar of TV hockey broadcasting, what things do you like? What things would you change?
I would make sure the play-by-play guy is good. Number one. That would be my first thing. I mean, no, I like it. I think they've gone casual with their. I don't watch the intermissions so much. I do watch the Canadian intermissions. I'll watch Jeff and Elliot, and I've always watched Ron McLean. I think he's fantastic. It's just a different feel, like that whole presentation. No matter what personnel comes through there, and how the format kind of changes, it's generally always entertaining. I don't know, just because of the personalities, it's because of this, maybe the seriousness of it, although they have fun with it. I like that. I think the American.
What about the overall game presentation? Not just the intermissions or the ice level interviews, but the whole soup to nuts.
Get rid of some of the crap. Like, just get rid of some of the crap. I know they're trying to sell ads and things pop up all over the place now, but I don't need, I want to watch the hockey game. So I don't need to be, I'm not going to be sitting here watching the game like I've watched it for 50 years going, I know where the puck's going to go before it goes there for the most part at this stage. And so does anybody else that's been watching it for a long time. And, I don't need to, I'm not going to be reading ice times. If I got 5 guys, like, all that stuff. Who cares? I want to watch the game. Maybe to some degree that. I to be honest, I don't pay attention to that crap anyway. I watch the game. So, but I would just clean it up, and I don't know who they're catering to. I don't know. I don't understand. Whatever. I just don't understand it. I'm watching the hockey game. I understand the hockey game. I get the hockey game, and I'm not so much into the math. I'm into the character, chemistry, commitment, coaching, all those intangibles that make hockey the greatest sport in the world. All those intangibles that make it incredibly unique. that made us fall in love with when we were playing pond hockey when we were 5 years old and playing youth hockey when we were 8 years old or 10 years old. Math's wonderful, but there's people that write about it or talk about it that wouldn't know a hockey puck if it hit them in the side of the head. They could tell you some statistics, but they don't know maybe they never played team sports. I don't know, but they don't, that competitive thing, that chemistry thing. It's a firehouse. A hockey team's a firehouse. And it doesn't take much to screw up that balance. And the Canucks have learned that. It's commitment, it's chemistry, it's hard work. You work your sack off, and that's how you're going to win hockey games. And guys have to get along, and there has to be a certain level of chemistry. There has to be buy-in. There's so many intangibles, and there's so many crazy bounces, and you're always changing lines, and it's a beautiful thing. And the intangibles are the key to hockey. I mean, you can build rosters, but there's a lot of little things that have to fall into place on top of the skill. That's why the most skilled team doesn't necessarily win. You can see that. You see that all the time.
You begin your book, No Heavy Lifting, talking about former NHL players Andrew Ference and Steve Montador and your trip to Africa on behalf of an organization called Right to Play. Tell us about Right to Play and about your trip, please.
Right to Play, I haven't been as involved in it in many, many years because my friend Mark Brender, who now is the Canadian Director for Partners in Health, which is another outstanding NGO, left there not too many years after the trips. We did Monty and Andrew in 2007, and then we did Kilimanjaro the next year in 2008, both for Right to Play to raise money and awareness. Mark moved on a few years later, and I think that organization kind of de-emphasized international, not completely, but I think they really poured the emphasis onto First Nation and Indigenous in Canada. So their emphasis changed. So they got away from, which is great. Obviously, I remember being involved a little bit a few years after that with like equipment deliveries to various places. I remember being on Manitoulin Island for equipment delivery, stuff like that, donations and things, but they kind of got away from some of the international stuff. But that trip was a documentary and there's Monty, the late, great Monty, for Nesson and also for TSN/NHL Network. There was an hour version and then 2 half-hour versions. 2 half-hour versions were just for the Boston market. And it was once in a lifetime, and it's hard to look at Monty.
You, in your book, return to the topic of Steve Montador, who, as you wrote, quote, took a lot of punches, often fought heavyweight enforcers, lost the majority of his fights. And you explained that Montador presumably took his own life in 2015. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to explore for a few minutes what you wrote next, which is don't blame the game. Sign a waiver or find something else to do. Will you expand on that, please?
Well, Monty wouldn't have changed a thing. Monty was an unbelievable. And by the way, the suicide thing is not confirmed and is very important to his family that that's not assumed or presumed. It was kind of one of those things. I don't know. You have it in front of you, maybe, but do you have it in front of you?
Well, as I said, I use the word presumably.
Yeah,
I have the book in front of me.
I forget what the exact wording was, but it was basically to say it's a possibility, but we're not going to declare it. There was a couple other possibilities, but to get back to what you're talking about, and I meant it, don't blame the game, because it's the same thing with this woke stuff where you can go back 20 years and pluck something when the world was an entirely different place. So hockey right now is entirely different than it was 10 years ago, which is entirely different than it was 10 years before that, and it was 10 years before that. The guys playing back through all those years, and you can go back to 100 years or 50 years, that was their life. They sacrificed themselves. They played. They were killing each other. I mean, it was a violent game. It remained a violent game, and it kind of to some extent is now, but not what it used to be. And Monty was the consummate team player. He'd get beat up. He'd get in fights. He'd defend teammates. He'd fight for the good of the team, to change momentum, to protect the teammate, to whatever that possibility might be. He was just a great teammate. And that's the life he chose. That's the life he loved. He paid the price for it, as so many have. But in that's, it's like hindsight. I think at the time, if you asked these guys that played, they might say, man, if I had to do it over all again, I wouldn't have fought, and fighting's not a good thing. But ifs and buts for candies and nuts, it'd be Christmas every day. We'd all go back and change certain things if we could. But the guys loved playing the game. They were like, look at the new coach of Vancouver, Rick Tocchet. What is it, 3,000 PIMs and 400 goals, and Rod Brindamore was no slouch, 1,000 penalty minutes. I mean, there's penalty minutes now. You look back even 15 years ago, guys that had career penalty minutes, they would take certain NHL teams now 5 seasons, the entire team, to get to a guy's career, penalty minute total. So yeah, don't blame the game itself, because that's what the game was. And that was the commitment. That was the love. And that's what they went through. And I don't think, obviously you'd change things if you could, especially health-wise. But at the time, he's just being a great guy and a great teammate. And it was a very sad, as I mentioned, it was difficult it's difficult to think about sometimes, because we had an unbelievable trip, and he was an unbelievable guy. And he was one of the funniest frickers I've ever met in my life. Like, one of the hardest I've ever laughed it's right up the top of the book is about Monty's story. It was just, he had a guy that was with us who only spoke Swahili, and just based on body language and our reaction, this guy was pissing himself for 15 minutes, laughing probably the hardest this guy's ever laughed in his life, just watching, not understanding a word that was being said. I mean, that was just how funny Monty was. He was just a tremendous character. So, and he was very excited about the trip. And as I point out in the book, just when he was thinking about committing to this down the road, and whatever happened to that in that mind, and some of the things that these guys have to rely on, whether it's alcohol or drugs or a combination of that, or they go through depression. And he donated his brain, and there's the CTE topic, but that's a whole other ball of wax, and I'm no doctor.
Nor am I smart enough to untangle this. But before we leave the topic, Ken Dryden devoted an entire book to the life and the death of Steve Montador. And regarding the NHL's culpability, here's what he said, quote, "When inaction comes, when action is possible, that's what's inexcusable. It's not right, not fair, not necessary." Your thoughts?
When an action is...
When inaction comes, when action is possible. And he references that the NHL contemplated a long-term study of brain injuries and cognitive problems, but one of the NHL lawyers wrote in an email, well, we're going to leave that to the NFL.
Right. So in other words, an opportunity to take action, and they didn't take it. And I'm assuming this means, but again, man, you're getting me going here, Glenn. I've softened, like most people, not to the degree of everybody, because it is, like the fights. We had a fight at the game last night, a couple of heavyweights going, and it was, you still see, and again, people are going to say, well, this doesn't justify it. And Ken Dryden is one of them. He says there's no justification whatsoever. There's momentum change fights. There's to rally your team fights. There's retaliation fights. There's, and I'll just say this, it has morphed gradually and effectively. So the goon thing's gone. I think the demarcation point where we finally said enough is enough, and I agree totally with this, was when Leafs Canadians opening night, and I'm going to say it was 7 or 8 years ago, Larocque for the Canadians, and who's my buddy? I knew his dad for the Colt Noir. Clonk goes the head on the ice, lights out, Bell Center, win, just everything on national TV, opening night, Leafs, Canadians. That was like okay, that's it. That's it. No more goon fighting, no more stage fighting, enough. And I'm 100% cool with it. In terms of spontaneous combustion between two middleweights or two anybody's because they're pissed off, rather than swinging a stick at a guy's head or cross-checking him in the neck, have at it, wrestle around, off we go. And I think given the way things have gone, that'll probably also, and the way the game's headed, more wide open, faster, et cetera, it'll just take a natural progression. But again, as I think I may have described in the book, you can't just snap your fingers. It's unnatural to assume that you can just snap your fingers because the game it'll just happen. It'll just happen. Let it happen. If you want it to go away completely, it'll go away completely, but just let it happen. Because the culture of the game takes time to adapt and metamorphosize as opposed to just saying, okay, that's it. Because then, I don't know. I think it's happening. I think it's happening. I think you'll probably get there, reach everybody's dream of, for some of them, no fighting. But guess what? Are you going to get rid of hits? Concussions are more concussions are caused by hits than are caused by fights. No question. Especially since now guys don't fight like Monty did 51 times in his career. And there used to be a lot of guys, lots and lots of guys that fought 51 times in their career. Now hitting is where, so I guess that means you'll have to get rid of that too. So we're just going to play. It'll eventually get to shinny.
Let's close on a happier topic, at least for tonight. There's a lot of stuff we're not going to get to that I wanted to, but I don't want to close this program without discussing your return trip to Africa in 2008 for Right to Play, along with Zdeno Chara, then with the Bruins. He and you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Here's a short clip from the documentary you produced.
On the top of Africa, to our left and distant right, stood enormous glaciers. The crater floor sat more than 1,000 feet below us. For 10 minutes we took it all in and then departed quickly, absolutely spent and anxious for descent. In less than 24 hours, we had passed through at least 7 different climate zones, from glacial ice pack on the mountaintop to the rainforest near the gate at the end of the trail. Captain Zdeno Chara of the Boston Bruins had led us on a true hockey odyssey.
Rob, I admire that you're even able to put that experience into words at all, both on the page and in the documentary. That must be one of your proudest, both professionally and then just the whole experience.
It was unbelievably remarkable. Yes, indeed. From a proud standpoint, production wise, the year before where we were helping the kids I'm more proud of that one. That one gets me a little misty watching those kids at the end of it with Monty playing kind of a duck goose game with them. And we talk about, every kid deserves the right to play, that type of thing. But yes, proud in terms of the way it all came together and fighting through that and getting in over 6 days and getting to the very tippy top. And then being able to, as you said, put it on paper and on tape. And again, it's a sad thing. Mark Berg, the cameraman on that trip, has passed away since. Had a head brain tumor and passed. The man that was at the sign with me at the very top. He passed away. I think last time I saw him was covering the final Boston and St. Louis in 2019. He had recovered, and then Zdeno actually sent the text to me and Brender. I don't know, 6-8 months later that we'd lost him. So that was tough, but amazing. I always think of him and that trip with the group that we had. That we're a fraternity, a small fraternity from that journey. And Zdeno was incredible. Like, he was so gracious and so cool and fantastic on that trip that we've actually talked about doing a Himalayan thing at some point, but seriously, and it was maybe going to be this year, but I'm under some extenuating circumstances right now just because of some of the BS's that's been going on, unfortunately, for the first time in 30 or 40 years. Very strange for me to be in a weird situation like this where you get people attacking you for no reason, but yeah, it was nuts, and hopefully we had a chance to do something similar again.
Well, this has been a hockey life well lived, and there is more to come, more fodder, I'm sure, for Rob Simpson's next book, whenever that is. And you're venturing into the world of new media and online media. So I feel confident saying we haven't heard the last of Rob Simmer Simpson's adventures yet. I guess you would agree with me.
No question about it. And I'm involved like in some human rights writing as well. That I'm kind of a little side project that's kind of been printed unofficially, but it needs tweaks. And I'm kind of in the international relations end of it. As a side thing, I've been kind of studying for 20 years. But the hockey is first and foremost. And yeah, we'll continue cranking here. Let me just say one thing real quick, and I referred to it a moment ago as it relates to being attacked, which sounds pretty dramatic. It's overblowing it.
Sure.
I had recently and I can't get into too much because it got so bad that I've actually had to file defamation procedures, put it that way, in a couple of instances that are ongoing. So I can't get too far into it, but I had some garbage stated about me, essentially, that it was 180 degrees from the truth. Every single thing that was said was absolutely false, complete garbage. And it was startling to go through this type of thing. And the ultimate end result or accusation was that I was some type of misogynistic guy, and it's comically sad. And when I heard that, or seeing this unfold in an asinine way, and 99% of people I talk to, they're like, "What is this?" And I was like, I don't know what this is. But Cassie Campbell Pascal, who I've done a number of play-by-play with her, women's professional championships, college, university championships, pals with Tessa Bonhomme, drinking buddies with Natalie Spooner over the years, best friends with Kelly Massey at the Hall of Fame. Some of my best friends in the world are women: Shauna, who I'm visiting now, Stephanie in New York, Carol in Detroit. It's absurd. They would laugh in a person's face who would make that type of statement. They might even spit in the person's face when they heard somebody say that about me. And it's unbelievable. That's fine, because there are trolls, and then there are amateur journalists who pretend to be trolls, and that's going to happen. And I get it, because we are in a public thing. The disappointing thing is a small handful of cohorts and friends, just a small handful that I've known for decades and years, that should know better, but accepted garbage as gospel. And that's the troubling part. It's like, really, fellas? Like, really? So we'll get through this, and off we go. Thanks for that.
I'm glad that you took the time to say that. And I, for one, have personally seen Catherine Tappan of TNT run across the bowels of Climate Pledge Arena to give you a hug. course, I mean, Darren Pang did too. So I'm not exactly sure the point I'm making here, but there are a lot of people who find you to be someone they think very highly of. And although I have not known you as long or as well as most of those, you are somebody that I admire as well. And so count us as a much, much larger group than anybody who's in the other camp.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. And by the way, Catherine is a very talented individual, but more than that, just an absolutely great person. So that was really cool seeing her because it had been a little while. And then, you know, Panger, when he hugs me, he comes up to my, you know, right in my sternum here. We've done some pretty cool on cams, me and Panger, in the past, where stand-ups, where he'd be stand 3 steps up in the deal. No, we actually didn't hug, Glenn. That part was more a handshake bro hug.
That was a writer's embellishment.
It's all good. I appreciate it.
But what I appreciate is that you've taken 90 minutes of your time, and I know you get pulled in a lot of different directions, and it was very nice of you to take an hour and a half to share your stories and your insight and your wit and wisdom, and I had a really good time. I hope you did too, and I hope you'll consent to maybe come back and deal with some of these other questions I didn't get to tonight.
Glenn, it's been an absolute delight. I thank you very much. You're very kind. And it's always great to see you at the rink. It's a lot of fun editorializing as the games unfold.
Thank you, Rob. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week on Hockey Time Machine.